Welcome back. February 8th, 2021. George Shultz, one of our great leaders in the victory against Soviet communism, passed away. Steve Hayward writes, "There are not many of the giants of the late Cold War still among us. And today saw the passing of one of the greatest, Reagan's Secretary of State George Shultz, at the age of 100. Only Henry Kissinger and Lech Walesa come to mind as remaining peers of Shultz." Steve said that he would recommend having others look into complete obituaries to George Shultz because it was quite a life. And Tevi Troy wrote one of the great obituaries over at City Journal. But one story he wanted to tell about George Shultz's finest hour. We never knew until many years after he left office that the first thing he did every time he met a Soviet official was bring up a political prisoner and demand that the Soviets release him. The Soviets always complained that such prisoners were purely internal matters and none of our business. But Shultz had none of it, pointing out that as the Soviets had signed on at the Helsinki Accords in 1975, they had pledged to respect human rights. So we had all the standing we needed to hold them accountable, and they didn't like it. The best instance of Shultz standing up to the Soviets came the week after the USSR shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007 in early September 1983. Shultz had previously scheduled a meeting with Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko in Madrid on September 7th, which he decided to keep. It ended up provoking the first tiny crack in Soviet diplomatic intransigence. By prior agreement, Shultz was to host Gromyko at the American ambassador's residence, but when Gromyko's limousine pulled up to the house in front of a gallery of several hundred protesters and photographers, there was only a low-level State Department aide to greet Gromyko at the door. Shultz was absent. The meeting table was left spare with not even a glass of water for Gromyko. Shultz opened, as he deliberately did in every meeting with Gromyko, with a particular case of Soviet human rights abuse, in this instance, Anatoly Sharansky, as well as KAL 007. Gromyko insisted that he would not discuss either subject and rose from the table as if to walk out. Shultz rose from the table, but made no effort to persuade Gromyko to stay. To the contrary, he called Gromyko's bluff. "Fine, go," Shultz said sharply. Gromyko remained standing and kept talking. He didn't want the blame for having ended the meeting abruptly. At length, he backed down and sat down, relenting on his refusal to allow Shultz to bring up his points about human rights and KAL 007. No real progress was made on the substance in the 2 hours of acrimonious back and forth that followed, and after the meeting ended, Shultz went before the media outside and said, practically before Gromyko's limousine was out of the driveway, that Gromyko's responses were totally unacceptable. Shultz's veteran State Department interpreter told him that in nearly 2 decades of participating in high-level meetings with Soviets, he had never seen such a blunt encounter. Good for George Shultz. May I say a word about the Super Bowl? First, on the halftime show by The Weeknd. I know some have their criticisms of it, but there was one interesting thing that didn't happen. Someone else, a female, pointed out, not one crotch grab. Haven't seen that absent from a Super Bowl halftime show in a really long time. Good for The Weeknd. As for the Super Bowl, just a few thoughts on sports generally, if I may. It's an area we used to escape from politics and work and stress, until the left and leftism in the NFL and elsewhere realized we can use our money, or they could use their money and influence on leftism as well. It turned a lot of people off, especially the hypocrisy of someone like Colin Kaepernick, who worked for a company that paid him millions to lecture America about her racism, while the company paying him millions was literally using slave labor in China. Then, of course, there were the lectures about an area of life we thought a pretty good exemplar of race-free consciousness, professional athletics, a testament to talent and ability above and beyond anything else. But then you get racial activists like Bree Newsom tweeting this morning, quote, "There is an enormous amount of racial undertone to the entire conversation about Tom Brady being the best athlete of all time, because it willfully ignores black athletes past and present, as well as the ongoing systemic discrimination against black athletes in the QB position. Close quote. This was written, of course, just as a black quarterback played in the Super Bowl she was writing about. Same quarterback who won a Super Bowl the year before. It prompted Ben Shapiro to respond this way. He wrote, "Nope. The greatest athletes of all time pretty much by acclamation are in basketball, Jordan, in track, Bolt, in boxing, Ali, in baseball, Ruth, in golf, Nicklaus or Woods, in swimming, Phelps, in football, Brady, in tennis, Federer or Williams, hockey, Gretzky, gymnastics, Biles, soccer, Pele. Sports are great because there are objective metrics of success." Dennis Prager often laments how few safe from politics spaces there are in life anymore. Not in the arts, not in art, not in music, not in sports. Almost nowhere is life free of politics, and thus almost nowhere in life is it free of a lot of stupidity too, especially if the politics is based on racial grievance. Heck, you can't even plow your neighbor's yard of snow without it becoming political, as you may have read about this weekend. So the left got to sports and ruined a lot of it. As we wrote in the Book of Man, in competition and sports, a man develops attributes that last long after the game or match. Perseverance, the will to win, teamwork, work ethic, self-control, to name just a few. Howard Cosell, the great American sports writer and broadcaster, said, quote, "Sports is human life in microcosm. If you lose a game, do you give up and hang your head, or do you press on with tenacity to win the next one? If you win, do you boast and brag, or do you credit your teammates and your coach? The way you react on the field or the court will often mirror the way you respond in the office or the classroom. If approached correctly, games provide happiness while also improving man's soul. Albert Einstein remarked, 'I know the most joy in my life has come from when I play my violin.' After a hard week of work, there can be no better feeling than enjoying healthy diversions. They refresh and replenish the mind like a drink on a summer day." Benjamin Franklin taught that, quote, "games lubricate the body and mind," close quote. While we all need rest and relaxation, it becomes very easy for leisure, of course, also to descend into slothfulness, laziness, and irresponsibility. Said Voltaire, the famous 18th century French philosopher, "Work spares us from three evils: boredom, vice, and need or want." Final thought, putting some of this together. I was speaking with a prominent attorney here the other day. We were speaking of our fathers, both World War II veterans. And my friend asked me, "Do you think this society could fight that war today?" We can discuss that. I won't tell you what I said just yet. I'll tell you later. In the meantime, though, it had me rediscover this great essay from Theodore Roosevelt that I think sums up the difference between his day and ours to the extent of the difference you see here. He wrote, "What we have a right to expect of the American boy is that he shall turn out to be a good American man. The boy can best become a good man by being a good boy. Not a goody-goody boy, but just a plain good boy. I do not mean that he must love only the negative virtues. I mean that he must love the positive virtues. Good, in the largest sense, should include whatever is fine, straightforward, brave, clean, manly. The best boys I know, the best men I know, are good at their studies or their business, fearless and stalwart, hated and feared by all that is wicked and depraved, incapable of submitting to wrongdoing, and equally incapable of being tender to the weak and helpless. Of course, the effect that a thoroughly manly, thoroughly straight and upright boy can have upon the companions of his own age and upon those who are younger is also incalculable. If he is not thoroughly manly, then they will not respect him, and his good qualities will count for but little. While, of course, if he is mean, cruel, or wicked, then his physical strength and force of mind merely make him so much the more objectionable a member of society. He cannot do good work if he is not strong and does not try with his whole heart and soul to count in any contest, and his strength will be a curse to himself and to everyone else if he does not have a thorough command over himself and over his own evil passions, and if he does not use his strength on the side of decency, justice, and fair dealing. In short, life, as in a football game, the principle to follow is hit the line hard, don't foul, and don't shirk, but hit the line hard. Good rule for conservative politics, too. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.